So I just finished setting up this amazing 1/3 scale Vampirella statue from Prime 1 Studio. You can actually go back and check out the video I launched a few weeks ago. And as you see, she went in my little monster horror corner, and most of the stuff here are vampires and werewolves. And you gotta say, those are just amazing creatures, and it got me thinking maybe we should do a video on them, especially since this corner is so scary. And it's not the statues that are scary. It's that god-awful football team I followed for 30 years. Hey, my name is Mr. X. Welcome to the Extreme Channel. We are giving away $1,000 statues to you guys. If you want to know how to win one, stay tuned for later in the video. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Going to do a little bit different video for you today. It's going to involve statues, it's going to involve vampires, it's going to involve werewolves, it's going to involve my opinion. With that being said, it's not specifically going to be a countdown of what's the best vampire and werewolf statues, although we will talk about vampire and werewolf statues. By the way, if a vampire and a werewolf mixed together like they did in Underworld, I don't remember what they called it. Was it a vampirewolf or a were-ire? Were-ire? That sounds better. Let me know in the comments below, because every time you make a comment in a video, you are actually entered into a contest that you could win a statue. Check it out. As we try to grow this channel, we like to reward you guys for watching and subscribing. So because of that, every 5,000 milestone when it comes to subscribers, we give away a couple $1,000s worth of statues. We've actually given away over 20 statues. To win one is easy. First, you gotta be subscribed to the channel. You'll get bell notifications when videos drop. Each video that drops, you want to make a comment on those videos. We pick a random video, we give away statues based on a comment. You can say whatever you want. The more videos you comment on, the higher your chances are to win. So believe it or not, I've owned about 15 vampire and werewolf statues together, and we're going to comment on a lot of them today. But I really wanted to dive in and think, hey, what are the best werewolves out there and what are the best vampires? Not statue related, although they may be coincidentally, but what are the best of that creature out there? Now, this was a little bit difficult for me to figure out a top 5 in each one, because part of it is, do they have a movie? And if they have a movie, was the movie good? I didn't want to take that into consideration. I didn't want to take into the fact if they have a movie, although most of them do, and was the movie good? Because a lot of times the movie wasn't good, but the creature was really good. So I've come up with a very subjective list of my top favorite vampires of all time and my top favorite werewolves of all time, with a few honorable mentions. Now keep in mind, this is the creature itself. While I'm sure subliminally the quality of the movie actually affected my countdown, I tried to be as objective as possible, or at least ignore that and just be like, is this a cool creature? And some of them have statue versions, which we're also going to talk about. But before we do that, I got to let you know my little vampire werewolf setup here isn't complete. I have one more coming in really soon. So before we start the countdown, make sure you've not only liked this video, but you've subbed to the channel and hit the bell notification so you don't miss that upcoming piece. But for now, let's start with the vampires. So we're going to start with honorable mention. And how can we ignore the Count? His name is Count from Sesame Street. Of course, I'm in jest. Let's get to some real honorable mentions, like this incredible badass from Twilight. Edward Cullen. Didn't have fangs and really wasn't that impressive. Okay, this was another fake honorable mention. A real honorable mention is Marcus from the Underworld. So this is one of the vampire elders. What was really cool about him is he actually turned into like a half bat. And supposedly he was the strongest of them all. And I do have that statue from ECC, of course, but he is a real honorable mention. Now let's get to the top 5. Number 5 is Lestat from Interview with a Vampire. Now, not just the character played in the movie, but from the original book. So he was not only a brutal vampire, but he was sophisticated at the same time. I mean, and he had no moral sense at all, which a lot of vampires don't, but that's why he comes in at number 5. However, he's beaten by this badass, Selene from Underworld. She was a badass, especially after she got those powers in like the 3rd or 4th movie. She lived to kill the enemy. She questioned everybody. She couldn't be stopped. Not to mention she was a female lead, which is fantastic. So she comes in at number 4. Number 3 is the living vampire, Morbius. That's right. While we've seen a few statues of Selene and none of Lestat, we have seen a few statues of Morbius, mostly custom, and you're going to see one in a second here. But I loved Morbius growing up. You know, and he's in all these different comics and timelines besides his own comic. And it's for that reason that to this day I still own this statue that I think is absolutely amazing. It's still one of my favorite statues. I have it next to the first appearance of Morbius in a 9.8. But he actually, depending on which version of him, he sucked the blood through his hands, which is a little bit different. But he always had that moral dilemma. Unfortunately, he was destroyed by Jared Leto in that god-awful movie. Of course, we're not going to leave out David from Lost Boys, played by Kiefer Sutherland. To this day, still one of the most badass vampires, and maybe it's some nostalgic from when I was young, but huge fan of this guy. Again, so evil, both in his human form and vampire form, and I think that says a lot. Now, before we get to number one, I do have to do a disclaimer. I don't have Dracula on the list, although he's arguably the greatest vampire of all time. I don't have him for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is there's so many iterations of him, and some were very good and some were very bad. While he probably does deserve the top spot, we're not giving it to him. In fact, we're not even giving it to a full vampire. We are giving it to a half vampire, and you guessed it. Spoiler alert, this may be the statue that's coming out. And backup, by the way, there are some statues of David, and of course there's lots of Dracula statues. But the Blade statues, there's quite a few. I used to own one. I may be getting another one, kind of a spoiler. But Wesley Snipes really brought this character to life as the second Marvel movie that ever came out after Howard the Duck. And this is the true start of the MCU. I tried not to base it off the movie, but clearly there's some movie mixed in with him as the number one vampire. Now let's move into werewolves. This is a real honorable mention list, starting with the Lycans from Underworld. Very similar to Dracula, they're only honorable mentions simply because there wasn't like one really specific Lycan. There was Marcus, the werewolf, and of course Lucius. But what's cool about these is there have been some really amazing statues from ECC, Elite Creature Collectibles, a few other ones, but these were the good ones. The life-size bus I used to own, the 1/3 maquette, which I still own to this day. But these are just badass werewolves, and if a pack is going after you, these definitely need to be recognized as honorable mention. Another one, you're thinking I'm a joke, but wolf like me, I was scared of this werewolf that the crazy chick from Bridesmaids played. There's 2 seasons on, I don't remember if it's Netflix or I think it's Peacock. This is a crazy, weird werewolf. The only thing I didn't like is it's on all 4s, which so is our number 5, but you cannot ignore American Werewolf in London. Not only because of the amazing transformation scene, but he just really terrorized London. And this one, the movie probably did affect my opinion without a doubt, not only due to the amazing transformation scene and special effects, but the movie was just hilarious with the undead and the comedy mixed in with the horror. But ultimately, like I said, it really fell as the number 5, so my least favorite of the 5. And I did own a statue based on this from PCS. If you remember, they had this piece for a while, which is pretty cool. And I have about 5 or 6 other werewolf statues that won't be on the list today as well. Or is what everyone calls an underrated movie, Dog Soldiers. Again, multiple werewolves. And this is an underrated movie, although I know everyone that's seen it says it's amazing, so I guess it's not really underrated. But look at how cool that is. And they were vicious, they were scary. I think that is some of the extenuating features of a great werewolf, except number 3. When Michael J. Fox played Teen Wolf, this was amazing. It was amazing that he transformed into a werewolf during a basketball game, and they said, you know what, let's keep on playing. And I've seen the new series before on MTV. I thought it was okay, but nothing compares to Michael J. Fox as the Teen Wolf. Number 2 is my favorite werewolf movie, The Howling, and specifically Eddie. The reason why is, as a human, he was scary. He was a serial killer as a human. You look how freaky this dude is. And then I remember when he says, I'm a lot more than that, an amazing transformation scene into this awesome, awesome piece. You know, I've seen a life-size statue of this before that looked amazing. I would love to own it. Instead, I own PCS's 1/4 scale, which is an okay statue, but it's a representation of my favorite movie, which is why I have it. Now, the reason this wasn't number 1 is because there were multiple werewolves like that, where the number 1 of Reverend Lowe from Silver Bullet, Stephen King's movie right here, was number 1 because he was just one werewolf terrorizing a town. And it's funny because he was so innocent at the beginning. You're like, oh, this is a priest doing good. Then you found out that the priest is really, really freaky. And not only is he freaky, but the werewolf that he turns into is amazingly freaky right here. There's not a lot of good shots of the werewolf, but it is truly, truly scary. So much so that Gary Sinise, the crazy guy, was even scared of the werewolf. But this is my number 1 werewolf in my opinion, of all time. What's yours? If you haven't commented, comment below what you would rather be, a werewolf or a vampire. I would choose werewolf because I like the sun and I could still see it. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Please drop a like and then also stay tuned for more statue and pop culture related content. Thanks so much. Take care.